like a dream. This is a 028 Martin, CF Martin and Company from the 1800s. And I'm fortunate enough to have inherited this guitar. I inherited it from my father, who inherited it from his father. So literally this is a family heirloom, and I'm just so happy to have it. I'll tell you some stories about this as we get along today, but I want to welcome you to Guitar Discoveries. Glad to have you back here in my studio lounge and have us talk a little bit about this amazing guitar. What is it about Parlor Guitars? For quite a while there, Parlor Guitars were really no big deal. And in fact, when I inherited this guitar back in the mid-'80s, Parlor Guitars were kind of not popular. Nobody was really, well, very few of the big name artists were using them, at least on stage. Some might have been using them in the studio, but not on stage. So I wanted to find out about this guitar, and very fortunately, I wrote to the Martin Guitar Company back then. This is before the internet, right? And I got an incredibly detailed letter back from Mike Longworth, who some of you may actually know. He's kind of a legend with Martin. And he told me all kinds of things about this guitar and how to date it and everything else. And kind of specifically at the time, I was really wondering, the guitar wasn't very playable. And there's a couple of reasons for that. It actually had friction pegs for tuners, like the way a violin does. There were no machine heads on it, and it made it really difficult to tune, first of all, and to keep it in tune. It would pop. There was no way to get a smooth turn on that. So the notes were always popping around, so that was tough. The other thing is the guitar had been repaired many moons ago, probably back in the 1930s. It had developed some cracks along here from the pressure of the bridge up on this incredibly thin and wonderful resonant wood. This is a red spruce top, by the way, and this has Brazilian rosewood back and sides. It's got this incredible herringbone purfling around here. Also a little nip of ivory on there. Beautiful inlay work down the center of the back. Ebony fingerboard and ebony bridge. And I gotta tell you, this fingerboard is like a dream. The other thing that's really unusual about this guitar, and I don't know if you can see it, but the neck is in the shape of a V, a soft V. Can you tell? There's something about the way that sits in the palm that is really quite different than any guitar I've ever played before, but I truly love it. There's also this little thing that they sometimes refer to as a reverse ice cream cone right there. When I got the guitar, it really wasn't playable. There were a couple little of these pins, the bridge pins missing. So I went out and I found some bridge pins, actual Martin bridge pins, and tried tuning it up, but I never dared tune it up any higher than about, let's say, a third below standard pitch, because I was just worried about this thing popping here. So I did eventually bring it into the guitar shop in Laguna Beach, and they fixed this up beautifully. You can barely tell there were ever any cracks here. Similarly, there were a couple of spots, cracks on the back that were beginning to form, and they filled those beautifully too. So they got it to the playable standpoint, and that was when it still had friction pegs. So I was able to play and enjoy it a little bit and actually get it up to standard tuning using silk and steel strings, by the way. And then once I lived up here in Northern California, I met a luthier named Larry White. They know him as the Thin Man. He had a cool little shop right here in my town. Really a great guy and a great luthier, and his son Rylan continues on that tradition. I brought this into him one day, and I'd always been wrestling with this question of, is it more of a museum piece or is it a player's guitar? Should I play it? Should I, basically store it and keep it all original? And at a certain point, I just thought, I want to play this. I want to enjoy this guitar. I want it to have a life. I don't want it to be just up on a wall or in a case somewhere. So I asked Larry, what he would recommend to do about the tuners. And he installed these beautiful vintage looking tuners that just are a dream. So we took the guitar from really a challenge and impractical to being an amazingly playable guitar. I just love what he did with this. And it makes the whole guitar, it just makes it so easy now to pick up and play. And I'm telling you, you can strum this thing, you can pick this thing. It puts out a lot of sound. Are you going to Scarborough Fair? Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. Was a true love of mine. You can see it just rings. I mean, sustained for days, truly. It's amazing. It's an amazingly resonant guitar, an incredibly loud guitar, actually. I can play this against a dreadnought and it totally holds up. So I wanted it to be playable, and it is. It truly is. And now I actually use it on recordings. I play it quite a lot. Actually, the strings are a little bit dead right now because I haven't changed them in a little while. But I recently recorded a song called Greatness Has to Wait, and I used this as the primary acoustic guitar. I thought it was appropriate. It was all about looking backwards, and I wanted to use the guitar that looked backwards the farthest in my whole collection. So, some cool things about this guitar. All the insignias say C.F. Martin and Company, New York. However, the guitar was built in Nazareth, Pennsylvania, in the C.F. Martin shop there. That New York stamp stayed on the Martin guitars until the late 1800s, when they finally changed to C.F. Martin Nazareth. And they did that because apparently they had an agent in New York, even though the guitars were being built in Pennsylvania. So that's just kind of a fun tidbit. This particular guitar dates from somewhere between 1867 and 1885. It's in this nebulous period where there were no serial numbers and the craftsmen were not writing the dates on the underside of the soundboard. So there's no real way to date it super accurately, but we know it's between 1867 and 1885. So it's a very vintage old guitar, and it just has all this wonder because of that. So the thing about parlor guitars, they went out of fashion for quite a long time. I think they were fairly widely played during the folk era, the 60s. Some of those folk artists played smaller body guitars. But then it got to be the fashion to play large ones. Well, thanks to a couple of key players, one of them being John Mayer, who has and plays a parlor style guitar, and also Ed Sheeran. He made it very hip to play parlor guitar. Discovery I want to share with you is that here we have a guitar from long ago, over 130 years old, right? And these guitars, and the shape is going to vary, but these guitars are generally going online for somewhere around $5,000 of this vintage, if they're playable. Ironically, that's exactly the same price that the new Martin 028s go for if they're being built by the Martin Custom Shop. So it's kind of an interesting thing. You can decide, do I want a true vintage Martin 028 or do I want a new Martin Custom 028? And you're probably going to pay about the same thing. But if you're willing to pay that $5,000 price tag or so, you're very likely going to be able to get an incredibly playing, amazingly sustaining, wonderful instrument. Now, you might not want to take it out on stage. I never have, and I don't think I ever will. But as a guitar to play at home in the studio, it's really a dream. And I hope for every one of you that you get a chance to play a Martin 028 or 026, a true vintage sometime, because when you feel the resonance that this guitar has, I can't pull this guitar out and play it without people just saying to me, wow, This is a guitar that elicits the wow every time I play it. And I can't really say that for any other guitar I have, that I know it's going to elicit a wow. So that really is a treat. Yeah, you can hear it all over this thing. You stand alone at night, but you save a smile for me. You're on the stage in tights. Oh, you're all that I see. I thought I had pulled out an ace and put all my feelings behind, but now I'm caught in a tiresome chase. It's a feeling I really don't mind. You're dancing circles around me without ever moving at all. I'm feeling dizzy and losing control. Would you catch me this time? Would you give me a chance? Would you merely go on with your dance? Ring for days. That's our discovery. Martin 028 from between 1867 and 1885. Hope to see you next time. Please subscribe. I'd love to share with you more guitar discoveries. Got a lot of stuff to share. Lifetime of it. Thanks. I'm Robert Cassard.